Saving lives is job one for our community 911 call centers. We'll learn about this vital service and get tips on how you can help keep you and your family safe. Plus, the most dangerous rolling gun battle in the history of the Denver Police Department on this edition of Connected Colorado. Hi, I'm Wendy Brockman. We're in the 911 Dispatch Center in Arvada. 911 is there for you when you need it. But if you get your phone service through the internet, there's some important information you need to know. Let's start with Aurora's 911 call center to learn more.
911 Dispatch, where is your emergency?
When you have an emergency at any time, day or night, it's comforting to know that to get help, all you need to know are the three numbers 911. After dialing, you can be assured that your call will be answered promptly by emergency dispatchers, who will immediately try to gather from you the information they need to dispatch the appropriate emergency responders to assist you. Traditionally, when you call 911 from a standard landline in your home, the dispatcher views on the screen the phone number you're calling from, the name associated with that phone line, and the address you're calling from. In this case, all the dispatcher really needs to do is confirm this information and the nature of the emergency. They can then immediately dispatch the appropriate emergency responders to your address. But the days of the traditional landline or plain old telephone service, as it is called, are long gone for many of us. And one telephone service option that has replaced the traditional landline is called Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP for short. A VoIP phone can look just like a regular landline phone, but instead of using traditional phone lines, this service uses the internet to send and route phone signals by treating them as data. If you have phone service bundled with your cable television and internet service, it is using VoIP technology. But what does the difference between the traditional landline and the newer VoIP service have to do with calling 911? Actually, everything. The older landline system automatically identifies the address of the caller. Each householder address has a unique identifier in this older system. However, when you sign up for a VoIP phone service, your phone number has to be registered as related to your address. And this is done by your VoIP provider when you first subscribe to their service. The potential problem with VoIP phone service in 911 arises when you move but keep the same number, which happens frequently. If you change to a new address and call 911 using your VoIP phone, it is possible that the dispatcher may see your old address on their screen. This, of course, can create confusion and could even delay the arrival time of emergency responders. For this reason, if you're a VoIP telephone service subscriber, it is absolutely critical that you update your current address with your VoIP provider when moving. Moving is always a busy time, but re-registering your new address with your VoIP provider should be at the top of your to-do list. And there is one more issue with VoIP service you should be aware of. If the power goes out, your VoIP telephone service will not work. This is usually not the case with the traditional landline phones. So if you have VoIP telephone service, the power goes out and you need to call 911, you should make sure you have a backup in place, such as a cell phone.
Hello? Yeah, my power's out.
And of course, using a cell phone to dial 911 has its own set of issues, which we've addressed in a separate video. The newer technologies, such as VoIP, provide excellent telephone service, but do require that users are aware of differences compared to traditional landlines, especially when it comes to using 911. To get more information about VoIP telephone service and 911 emergency dialing, you can visit the Federal Communications Commission website at this address.
That's great information from Aurora. Now we're back at Arvada's 911 call center with Vicki Pickett. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
When should people call 911?
People should call 911 anytime there's any kind of an emergency in progress. It could be a medical emergency, a fire emergency, a police emergency. Anything that's risking life or property that's in progress is when they should be calling.
So when is it a misuse of 911?
When they're giving non-emergency information, or if they are just asking questions. We get a lot of calls where people are just asking about maybe a power outage or times for the 4th of July fireworks or things like that. That'd be considered a misuse.
You're not the source for that information.
Not necessarily, certainly not on 911.
Okay. How does that affect you guys when you get those kinds of calls?
So we have a limited number of 911 lines that actually come in here, and if you're tying up a line with information like that that really isn't a pertinent 911 emergency, it could prevent other people from being able to get through. And 911 is going to be always our highest priority for answering, so it could be tying up those dispatchers when they could be devoting themselves to a real emergency.
This is our day and age with cell phones. Do you need to register that with your local police jurisdiction?
So any cell phone that has service, actually even a cell phone that doesn't have service, can dial 911. However, if we want to notify you in case of an emergency, if you only have a cell phone, you need to register that with your local jurisdiction so we can contact you in the case of an emergency.
So if you do like a reverse 911, if there's a flood or something local, if you want to get that information on your cell phone, it has to be registered.
Correct.
Okay. And then how do you do that? You go online?
Yeah, so usually your local jurisdiction will have a link on their website that'll tell you who to register that information with. It's very important though, because the only way we can contact folks in an emergency, unless you have a landline, is if you register that phone, and that goes for VoIP or cell phone.
And you can also offer up other information about your house and your circumstances at home if you want the police department to know that.
Correct. So if you live in Jefferson or Broomfield counties, we have a system called Smart 911 where you can register your phone, associate it with your house, and that could be your cell phone, and you can associate pertinent information that helps responders help you better in an emergency situation.
Not everyone has that. It varies kind of from county to county.
Correct.
So people are going to need to check with their jurisdiction to find out. All right, but you would advise people to do that?
Absolutely. So when you're in an emergency situation, a lot of times it's hard to think clearly. You may not think of all the information that you need to provide for first responders, and this is a way for us to have more information to help you better in an emergency faster.
Makes sense. Thanks, Vicki, for having us.
Thank you.
In an emergency, would you know what to do? Some citizens are learning not just what to do, but how to help with CERT, Community Emergency Response Training. Team members from Lakewood and across the state came together to practice what they've learned.
Hey, folks, if I can have your attention.
Oh, yeah.
Are you coming in around? Okay,
So, and you're one of the victims?
One of the victims, yes.
And what injury do you have?
I have an arm injury from an auto accident.
Listen, there's a friend of mine, a buddy of mine over here. I think he's hurt bad.
My husband's been taking the CERT training classes, and so we thought it would be good to come out and be kind of a part of what was going on.
The CERT teams will go in there and they're given backpacks, gloves, and basic equipment for them to operate under. And then we'll go in there and simulate search and rescue, medical treatment and triage, and evacuation of the survivors.
Whatever else you see, just forget about it. Just think about your personal safety, number one. You all understand?
Because you can practice all you like, but if you don't actually go out in the real world and with the equipment, with your helmet on and with your mask on and with your goggles and so on, you don't really appreciate what it's like to work like that.
We actually have moulage artists that will come in there and allow folks to look like they've been through purgatory and back, with injuries and burns and what have you. And it helps type the realism in the exercises.
I think I hit my head up against the side of the car when we crashed.
Actually, I did a lot of Halloween makeup last year, so this is right up my alley.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Let's see. Nice.
I was the team leader for an operations team. Our name was Team Alpha. Our role was to go into an area where there had been a multiple car accident, to assess the injuries and the number of casualties present, and then to report back.
You guys right now are reactive. You want to become proactive.
Who's got an extra blanket? Or a stretcher?
And the instructors will be in with the CERT teams to coach them along on, do you remember what we said about raising the arm when to try to slow the pressure? Or if it's a simulated brake, do you remember how we told you about splinting?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We're going to do a quick head to toe.
It's going pretty good. These guys are doing a really good job of getting their triage station set up and organized. We've got an incident command post set up and organized, and now my job is just running around and creating havoc. My mother's down. I think she's there. I can't see her here. I think she's in the accident. She's deaf.
We are located out in the Aurora area, so we know from the movie theater, I think it's very important for people to have that experience, dry runs, to be able to respond under pressure.
Right now, we can see in the triage area, they've got people divided up, and they have divided up those who need immediate attention from those who won't need attention for a little while, delayeds and minors. And so what they're doing is going through and treating those who have the most serious injuries first, making sure that they get seen to and that they stay alive, and then working their way through and making sure that everybody stays safe, and they're doing a great job of that.
You need to return to triage. Can you take these two back to triage? With me.
So it's been great because mostly I think the Officer of Emergency Management for all the cities have realized that you can't do it by yourself. If you're the one affected, it's very hard to pull. Those people are home taking care of their loved ones.
And ask if they need anything. Ask if they need anything.
I think it's really great for the community. I mean, with everything going on, why not have all that practice? You want to make sure that you're prepared, so why not help that situation and volunteer to make it even better?
I think they're important. These courses are important to have around because just so many people think they know how to respond to something, but in actual practice probably don't really know how.
It's a lot of fun doing this stuff, and seeing citizens out and being able to respond to incidents like this is a fantastic thing.
Also keeping track of what areas are safe, so if they come across the hazmat or 1051.
It gives the folks the ability of not to feel so helpless when a disaster strikes.
It was excellent. Excellent. We had a great team. We worked well together.
1, 2, 3.
By the end of the day at 2 p.m. on Saturday, they'll have that, yes, we can do this. And there is that success there. And it gives those folks that wonderful feeling that I'm not so helpless after all. And I can help my family, help myself, and help my neighborhood safely.
As you heard earlier, cell phones are changing the way we use 911. Plus, in Littleton, mediation services can help keep problems from escalating into much bigger ones.
Hello, I'm Doug Stevens, Chief of Police for the City of Littleton. We all text. Now you can send an emergency text to 911 within Arapahoe County. Text to 911 can help in situations when a voice call will increase one's danger in the case of limited cell phone signal or for the hearing impaired. Text to 911, now available in Arapahoe County. Remember, call if you can, text if you must. Thank you.
Why don't you ever trim your trees?
I would trim my trees if I wasn't up all night listening to your dogs bark.
Can you even hear my dogs over your obnoxious motorcycle?
Whatever, man. You need to paint that house. Look at it, it's all peeling off the sides there.
Yeah, well, why don't I'm going to call the fire department, because every time you light your grill, smoke comes pouring into my house.
Hey, maybe we get the Christmas lights down before June this year, huh?
Does this sound familiar? Hi, I'm Ryan Thompson. I'm the Mediation Program Coordinator for the City of Littleton and the Conflict Resolution Center. We're here to help out in situations like this. When you contact the Conflict Resolution Center, a trained mediator will work with you to resolve many different types of conflict at no cost to you. Mediation provides an opportunity for persons involved in a dispute to work towards an acceptable resolution in a safe, confidential, and constructive environment. Mediation allows participants to discuss issues from their own perspective. We will contact and communicate with all parties involved to schedule a time that works for everyone to meet. We will also assist the parties in drafting an agreement that is acceptable and attainable. Just go to the littletongov.org/mediation website or give us a call at 303-795-3876. A trained mediator will be ready to assist you. Community resolutions for community disputes. Give us a call.
Preventing fires is very important for your safety, of course, and if you live in the mountains especially, it's critical to keep the area around your home clear. Now there's a new and easier way to do that. Let's take a look.
So we're really excited. We're doing a slash collection program today. We're in Evergreen, Colorado. What we have is an opportunity for the residents to bring truckloads of slash in and dump them off here, where we will process and turn it into a more transportable product and truck it down the hill to a compost yard.
I've got 2 acres in South Evergreen, and I was a firefighter for 30 years, so I kind of know what happens with property that doesn't get mitigated.
This is pretty typical of what we'll see. The smaller diameter, some of the smaller trees, and then a lot of the green needles and limbs. And this is really what we get a whole lot of. During the slash collection process and the fire mitigation process, it's important to remove the combustible material from around the home, and that includes pine needles and bark and those types of things. Pine needles will gather in rain gutters and the corners and the eaves of roofs. During a wildfire, that material can sit on a roof line and collect an ember that's floating in the air, and you'll have what's called a spot fire.
The bottom line is it's all about safety. This program is very convenient for residents. We have 27 confirmed sites this year in 2015, and hopefully that will grow next year.
The county commissioners got very aggressive and very proactive and expanded the program. The county commitment to this has been incredible.
To be able to provide this service to the residents of Jefferson County through a third-party vendor, it is cost-effective.
It's nice that they do different locations because it makes it convenient.
Our goal is to have a site like this located within 5 miles of each resident. So this is an opportunity in the surrounding neighborhoods. People need to fire mitigate their homes, which means preparing the area directly around their home for the wildfire season. What that gives the firefighters is referred to as defensible space. They have a chance to get in there with fire hoses, with hand tools, and they can actually protect that home from burning if they have an area they can work in.
Jefferson County has the highest number of homes in the wildland-urban interface, otherwise known as the red zone. So as we go into this wildfire season, take full advantage of the slash collection sites. It helps our neighbors, and it also helps the entire community. Lives can be saved with this mitigation process.
Teaching kids about 911 is critical. Here's more from Aurora on children and 911.
Of course, most adults are aware of dialing 911 when there's an emergency. But what about children? In numerous cases from across the country, young children have called 911 and ended up saving lives. Teaching our children when and how to call 911 is part of the basic education we should give them at the earliest possible age. The first part, teaching young children when to dial 911, is fairly easy. If there is someone hurt, they see something dangerous, scary, or just not right, and there is no parent or adult around or able to help them, they should call 911. It may or may not be a true emergency situation, but it's always better to err on the side of caution. But the second part, teaching young children how to use 911 properly, is more than just having them memorize 3 numbers. There's a bit more to it than that. Here's why. Traditionally, when you call 911 from a standard landline in your home, the dispatcher views on the screen the phone number you're calling from, the name associated with that phone line, and the address you're calling from. In this case, all the dispatcher really needs to do is confirm this information and the nature of the emergency. They can then immediately dispatch the appropriate emergency responders to your address. But this traditional model of how 911 works has been made a bit more complicated as this device, the cell phone, has changed everything. The majority of calls to 911 now come from cell phones. And while they're handy for their mobility, they also present some unique challenges for 911 dispatchers and some added responsibilities that adults need to teach their children about using 911. As mentioned, when a child uses a traditional landline phone to dial 911, the operator knows exactly what address they are calling from. So even if the child is unable to fully communicate their location when using a landline, the dispatcher knows exactly where they are calling from and can send assistance. But when a cell phone is used to call 911, despite what you may have seen on some TV shows, the ability of the dispatcher to know a cell phone caller's exact location is not precise, only to within 100 yards or so. This puts an additional responsibility on the caller to be able to clearly communicate their exact location. And that additional responsibility on the 911 caller to know their exact location also means that there is an additional responsibility on adults to have children memorize their basic street address.
We live at 231 South Chambers Road. I'm in the backyard. My daddy fell down.
Okay, 231 South Chambers Road.
With the precise address location from the child, along with the nature of the emergency if possible, The 911 dispatcher can then send the emergency responders to an exact location. And those minutes they don't have to spend searching can be life-saving minutes. When teaching children their exact address, pay attention to the precise details, such as whether it is a street, circle, or avenue, or east, west, north, or south. This prevents any confusion for emergency personnel in responding.
See, up there, the numbers?
And there's one more thing overlooked when teaching children about 911 and using cell phones. Because we frequently use one-touch button or memory dialing, not surprisingly, children often have no idea what their own phone number is. It is critical that children learn their own cell phone number. If a child dials 911, the dispatcher will usually try to keep them on the phone until emergency personnel arrive on scene. But sometimes, for many reasons, the caller gets disconnected. If the child was able to give the 911 dispatcher their cell phone number, and if the call gets disconnected, the dispatcher can quickly call them back. Adding these simple additional steps when teaching kids about 911 will ensure that, should the need ever arise, emergency personnel will have the best chance of responding promptly to the right location.
There's no doubt police work is unpredictable. Officers in Denver were recently awarded for their heroic work in the most dangerous police chase in the history of the department.
On an unseasonably warm day in January 2013, a known gang member's infant child died accidentally in Thornton, Colorado. That death triggered uncontrollable grief and drug-fueled violent rage by the father and 4 other gang members. After menacing and shooting at innocent civilians in Aurora and Montbello, the suspects were spotted in a stolen truck in northwest Denver. Then, the most dangerous rolling gun battle in the known history of the Denver Police Department unfolded. In their own words, officers recall their actions that day and share what it means to serve and protect.
That particular time I was assigned to District 1, the SCAT narcotics team.
And I was heading back to the Traffic Operations Bureau.
As we came up to 41st, there was a Honda Accord, and right behind it was the truck.
The TAC car aired that he had seen the truck.
I had that terror of like being in the water and having a shark brush up against you.
So I jumped in my car, got out the gate,
and was in a full sprint out to my patrol car.
And I turned in the intersection to get behind them.
I authorized the chase right away.
I start to hear gunshots.
I got back on the radio and authorized a pit maneuver.
And it takes a minute to register. They're shooting at us.
A lot of cars following it. Sounds like they went back to the west and then they were heading back to the north.
Just literally 2 blocks away, there's a middle school. And it's right at the time the kids are literally getting out, and they're all walking up and down these streets to go home.
The guy in the back raises a gun at me and fires.
I don't think the public always knows that. There are some real bad guys out there sometimes.
The gun seemed like it was that big, and it seemed like a cannon that he was shooting at me.
I turned eastbound around 44th Avenue to start to parallel it.
And the passenger in the truck, he comes out of the truck backwards like this and just starts shooting at me. Well, he's not shooting a revolver, he's got a semi-auto, and it's bam, 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 bam.
And there was no hesitation. They were going to catch these bad guys.
This was more of a military type of incident, which has no business, no place being in the civilian world.
It was one of my proudest moments on this department, seeing my fellow officers, how courageous I thought they were.
And I'm seeing these people on the street, I'm really concerned. I'm like, in our wake, are there people with just bullet holes in the back of their head laying on the sidewalk and bleeding? And
as we started to head north on Osage, Officer Pete Derrick, I see this, I didn't know it was him at the time, comes flying down southbound on Osage and parks his car in an attempt to, I think, try to block them in.
I'm going to sacrifice my car, use it as a roadblock.
Truck slows down a little bit and veers hard to the right.
I see this officer jump out of the car.
Truck's going right at him.
And was accelerating 35 to 40 miles per hour up onto the sidewalk.
And I don't know how Pete did it, but he got out of the way.
I felt like I was El Matador here.
And then he engaged the truck. He started shooting at it as it drove by.
At that point, I'm just shooting over the top of my gun, front sight pressed, both eyes open, so I could see the pursuing vehicles.
As we drive by, I hear this volley of gunshots.
I don't know how many rounds Pete got off, but it was multiple.
And it completely renewed my faith that the good guys were going to win that day.
I felt that's where we needed to change the tide of this battle.
So we continue northbound on Osage, and this is where, for me, things get real bad.
It was about that time that Sergeant Motika radioed that he had been shot through the windshield.
I've been hit. He's at 39th and Osage, just shot me through the windshield.
When these rounds came through the windshield, it was just a shower of glass. And I don't know how I did it. I turned my head real fast to the right as it was coming, just the reflex, and I could feel all these little pricks, the shower of glass just all the left side of my face. And then I turned back and looked, and I could see the two big holes in the windshield. Then I felt this burning, searing pain in my left shoulder and arm. And I looked down, and I could see the blood coming.
And I see that lead car pull to the curb just momentarily.
And I just took my hand off the wheel. I started going like this. Okay, I can still use my hand. I'm good.
And there was no hesitation on Jeremy Olive's part. He immediately swung his car past Motika's and took over that lead position.
And it was about that time that they had radioed that the vehicle had crashed at 39th and Osage.
20, we got him at 39th and Osage.
Chase ends, all the cars are kind of offset a little bit.
As they come around the corner, Lieutenant McDonald and Bob are engaging the suspects.
I heard some shots. I ran up next to Bob Motika.
It was like this dark cloud just started closing in on me like this.
The realization that he had been shot was finally really starting to catch up with him.
I'm like, all right, I'm out.
And he said, John, I've been shot.
So I turned around and I just started walking back towards my police car.
And I could see that Bob's been shot in the arm.
I said, just go get the bad guys.
He was still in the line of fire.
And I just look up and I see Damon walking towards me.
And he didn't have body armor on. And I felt like, well, I should put myself in between the gunfire and his body.
And Damon just like put him in my car.
I started to head towards the hospital.
And I go, Damon, I'm sorry for bleeding in your car.
He was apologizing for bleeding in my car.
He just kind of looks at me and chuckles a little bit. He goes, don't worry, it's Danny and Randy's car. So
to see someone that we had talked parenting, we had talked schools, we had talked Christmas programs, sitting in close proximity to me bleeding.
I guess I had my guardian angel with me that day.
I was just scared for Bob, and I was overwhelmed from the situation. And we got to the hospital it had to be less than 2 minutes, but it felt like an hour. And when we pulled up, man, DG was ready.
And at this time, the guy that was in the back of the bed just sits up, like almost something out of a horror movie.
Basically, I took up a position behind the patrol vehicle on the passenger side.
About this time, Mr. Tafoya finds a firearm.
And when he went to the passenger side of that car, he leaned in, or the truck rather, he leaned in and came back out with a gun.
He turns and points the gun in my direction.
The officer said he's got a gun.
Myself and Mott's both fired, and he went down, dropped the gun. Well, the whole situation wasn't over because the gentleman that was in the back of the pickup truck, he's yelling at us that he's going to kill us, and he's just going berserk.
Everybody exercised a lot of discipline and a lot of good sense.
And even after that initial shooting, we still reverted back to trying to do less lethal with the other guy. Metro showed up. They wound up engaging him with basically a line of Metro officers with shields and the dogs, and they were able to put him down.
That day, we won.
Sergeant Motika, I mean, he's the man, you know. Lead car getting shot at, gets shot, assesses him, does a self-assessment, and gets back into the chase. I can't think of a better officer that this department would want. I mean, he's a true hero.
The bad guys ended up as they should. We ended up the way we should. Everybody responsible has been adjudicated. They're, paying society for their crimes and whatnot. So, yeah, it made me real proud that day to see the end result and then to realize how many people were actually involved from the police department and the roles that they had in the whole incident. It was pretty incredible for sure.
Amazing work in Denver. Remember, if you need 911, it's there for you, as are all of our safety agencies. Be safe. We'll see you next time on Connected Colorado. Learn about what's new with 911, plus community emergency response training and a terrifying gun battle and police chase in Denver. This and much more on the next edition of Connected Colorado. Join me Thursdays at 8.